This week's episode of our show is sponsored by Larson's Ledgers of Treasures and Trinkets, which is now live on Kickstarter.
This book aims to bring you 300 gorgeously illustrated, craftable magic items that can level up with the players at your table.
Some of the amazing people behind Helliana's Guide to Monster Hunting are also involved in this incredible project that also has new player options that are inspired by bars and taverns, such as the Brewmaster Barbarian, the Tavern Brawler Fighter, as well as the Charlatan Rogue.
Most exciting for us, we collaborated with Loot Tavern to bring a bespoke magic item into this book. If you enjoy the Dungeon Dudes logo and love that sword and shield, they will be appearing in this book as magic items.
So follow links in the description below to get in on this project while it's still live on Kickstarter. And now, on to this episode. Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything D&D, including advice for players and guides for Dungeon Masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Today we are taking a look and tier ranking all the multi-class combinations for Barbarians in D&D 5e.
If you want to see how we are ranking these multi-class combinations, you can check out our video guide on how we are doing that right up over there.
But for now, we're going to dive right in and look at all the different ways that we can inject rage into the classes of D&D.
There's a lot to discuss, so let's get raging.
All right, kicking things off. The Angry Inventor, the Artificer. Does it work? Can you be so angry that you can make a better magic item?
Whenever I am trying to build something and I get frustrated, I end up breaking it. So I feel like that's the vibe that's happening here, is the Barbarian Artificer is like trying to work with its wrench and it just isn't working. And it starts smashing.
It just smashes it and then it doesn't work. And neither does this combination.
And that's why this combination gets a D.
Yeah. I just think that the Artificer and the Barbarian just do not... The Barbarian is what happens when the Artificer gets mad at their invention, as Kelly said. But I just think that the overlap here is a really hard sell.
The Artificer wants to be armored. The Barbarian doesn't. The Artificer wants to cast spells. The Barbarian doesn't. The Artificer might have some infusions it could use, but to take this multi-class just for some infusions is not going to be worth it.
The only overlap here is is that both like having a high Constitution score, and that's not going to get you very far at all. I really don't know which of the Artificer subclasses could even match up here. It's going to yield a character that is raging sometimes and casting spells the other, and never able to use all of their abilities together at the same time. And I just think that it falls apart pretty quick.
As we move on, though, we come to what I would consider the S-tier name. Not necessarily the S-tier multi-class, but the Bard and the Barbarian. The Barbarian.
I love that name. For me, this will forever be the Warrior Skald. Right?
That's fair.
I think that the combination of the Bard and the Barbarian conjures so much cool ideas of like the kind of warrior poet that is really in tune with their society, with their culture, but is also a raging warrior on the battlefield. And I actually think that you actually find a lot of cultural resonance with that from a lot of real world places. I honestly think, I always think of the Bard and the Barbarian as being a quintessentially Irish sort of thing. Even, or maybe Scottish, you want to break out the bagpipes.
Yes.
As you're swinging your battle axe. But it's very hard to play a musical instrument while you're swinging an axe unless you are Jack Black.
Jack Black with the battle axe. That is a guitar.
That's
his axe.
Yes. So, and of course, all credit to Jack Black for that. I think Brutal Legend is a hilarious game, and I wish it was playable in D&D 5e, but sadly it is like, really grinding that axe. Like, I wish it worked. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I will say that I actually think that this is above a D ranking. Bardic Inspiration can still work.
While you're raging, you can, yep.
Your spell casting is going to be tough. But you could focus on spells that you use for like social situations or things of that nature.
Yes, it's all non-combat all the time, which is honestly, this is one of those gaps that I feel needs to be solved with a bard subclass. Because I thought about, like, could you do something with the College of Swords?
There's something, like, you can use your sword flourishes.
You can. You don't get a fighting style for a two-handed weapon, and yeah, you can still wear armor and use an unarmored defense. It's just that you can't. There's no way to use those spells while you're raging, and I feel like that's the thing that I would love to see. I would love it if, like, there was some sort of Barbarian subclass that could still concentrate on spells and cast a spell as they enter their rage. That would be super cool, but alas, it does not exist.
I'm going to give this one a C. I might be biased because the flavor is just so
A C
delicious.
for great concept, but I just think it falls apart. And it's also because classically barbarians want to dump their charisma and bards want to usually dump their strength. So it's really hard to make the ability scores work out well.
I think there's a play here, and I think I'm giving it C because I think there is a way. You have to work real hard, and you're probably at a loss, but that doesn't mean you can't perform at the table and have fun with it if you try really hard.
It's just such an oil and water sort of situation.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's called a barbarian, so it's mixing better than oil and water in that regard. Cleric!
As always, the Cleric is an amazing dip. One of the downsides to the Cleric dip for the Barbarian in particular is you can't rage in heavy armor. So choosing the Cleric subclasses that give you heavy armor as that perk is not really what you're looking for. What you are looking for with this multi-class is not even the spellcasting either. It's the channel divinity powers and those neat little perks that the clerics get at first level, because you can channel divinity and your channel divinity power might still be able to be in play while you're raging. So
there's a few options here. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is the War Domain Cleric. Again, we're not going to use the heavy armor, but they have some nice little...
The bonus action attack you can use. And having a decent wisdom score is not something that you might not find on a barbarian. I've seen plenty of barbarians have wisdoms of +1 or +2, so it's easy for them to multi-class into it. And you can use the spellcasting outside of combat, as you can with the bard.
All right, but here's the memeable truth. The Peace Domain. The Peace Domain channel divinity.
Peace Domain on a raging barbarian.
So you get so angry, and then you yell to your friendly, peaceful comrades.
Love each other or else!
And then you run into battle, and everybody's bolstered by your raging peace. It works mechanically, and it's hilarious thematically. And it's enough that I'm going to give the Cleric a B for multi-class.
I do too. You could also have a Twilight Cleric, Twilight saying you need 2 levels to get the channel divinity in this case.
There's some plays here. There's some plays. Yeah. It's not the most optimized choice. You're never going to use the armor.
I don't think it's bad though. Like I mean,
you still are playing with the fact that a full spellcaster where you're not going to be using the spellcasting, but you're doing a 2-level dip.
But if you're only doing a dip. If you're only doing a dip, and then you just load up on all those cleric spells that are kind of useful outside combat. Like, you take Cure Wounds.
Guidance.
And you take Guidance. The other thing that is worth noting, and we'll come back to this again, is Spiritual Weapon for now does not require concentration. So you could cast Spiritual Weapon before you enter your rage, and the spell will remain in effect.
Thus giving you an extra bonus action attack. There's ideas there. So B,
there's things to work
I think you can build.
Yeah, I think there's a build.
A Peace Barbarian. Go for it. Moving on to Druid.
Druid and Barbarian feels like this is a very primal sort of thing.
I love the vibes here, and I love that we can actually make it work mechanically, because Barbarians to me are the primal warriors. They're the warriors of nature. Oftentimes with a lot of the barbarian paths, we see them tied to elements of nature and the raw elements of the world. And the Druid is the spellcaster associated with that. Again, we're looking at a primary spellcaster. So your spellcasting isn't going to vibe.
But Wild Shape with a Moon Druid can, because you can rage in Wild Shape, and if you're a Moon Druid, you have the more powerful Wild Shape forms. You can benefit from all your class features while you're Wild Shaped. The challenge with this is that I think that this is stronger taking maybe 2 levels of Barbarian and then going the rest Druid.
Yes. Being mostly a spellcaster and then being able to wild shape and rage. Now
Yes.
you're no longer casting spells. You're wild shaping and raging. But even then, when you get to higher levels, it kind of falls off.
It's super tanky because, again, with the current 5th edition implementation of Wild Shape, you get that hit point buffer, and now you're raging, so you've got half damage because of your damage resistance. It's a brutal combination, and you can use Reckless Attack with many monstrous forms as well. So I think that what becomes challenging here is that it gets worse the more Barbarian levels you take.
Yeah.
Because as you take more Barbarian levels, you are now not able to wild shape into those higher challenge rating creatures. So if you have 3 levels of Druid, but 6 levels of Barbarian, you're still only wild shaping into a challenge rating 1 creature, which as a 9th level character is probably not going to cut it anymore. Whereas if it's the opposite, I think it's still worth it at that point.
Interestingly enough, though, it still is you still want to start with your Barbarian.
Yes.
If this were the other way around, starting with Druid is actually the worst choice here. You start with Barbarian, so you get all of those features. You get your Constitution saving throw proficiency, which you're going to want as a primary spellcaster. So there's some elements here where actually this does belong on this episode rather than the Druid episode to actually talk about the benefits. Yeah, this is a weird one because this is a Barbarian episode and we're saying take 2 levels of Barbarian and then like the rest Druid. But you're starting with a Barbarian.
I would also just say that Barbarian 3, Druid 2 is probably one of the strongest 5th level characters in the game.
Cool, yeah.
Right? Because, like, that's when Wild Shape is still strong at those levels, because a 5th level Druid, Moon Druid, still can't Wild Shape into the challenge rating 2 creatures yet. And you're Wild Shape, so you don't care that you lost extra attack. You have the Bear Totem, Barbarian. You have all the Barbarian features. You're not really worried about what the spell features are that you've lost out on. I think it's really, like, that low-level build is really, really strong.
Are we calling this one the Barbarian?
Yes.
Bear.
Yes.
Barbarian.
Yes.
Ian.
Yeah.
Now, the complicated question is, what is our overall rank? Because I'm feeling like I want to give this one an A until you get into, like, tier 3 play.
I think Barbarian 3, Druid 2, at level 5 is S tier.
Yeah, but that's at one
Yes.
snippet.
And
of
as
the game.
soon as you get higher than that, that's when it drops off precipitously.
S to A, and
Yeah.
then suddenly you're at B, C, and
Yeah.
maybe even D by 20th level.
I really think it drops off quite substantially past, as soon as you get into tier 3 and tier 4, I think this really starts to get less potent.
Well, once you get the whole, you can concentrate on a spell while wild shape, then you're no longer using rage.
Yeah.
So your 2 Barbarian levels that you took at the beginning become completely obsolete at that point. So now the question becomes, overall, if we're looking at levels 1 to 20, is it an A or is it a B?
I think overall level 1 to 20, it's a B.
I think that's fair.
I think that in under level 5, it is unequivocally S tier. And from level 5 to 10, that's where you transition down.
A
Yeah.
to B,
Yeah.
and then beyond
Yeah.
that, you're looking at C.
So yeah, maybe some asterisks beside this one.
It's a complicated one, but if you're playing, most campaigns are going to be pretty low level and maybe not even make it past level 12.
Yeah.
In which case, this is a really great choice.
Yeah. And like unequivocally, like if you were Barbarian 10, Druid 10, that's pretty weak sauce as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Moving on to the fighter. I think the fighter and the Barbarian are made for each other. They are, in many respects, 2 interpretations of warrior traditions that are quite rich, and they blend together elegantly.
You know what the secret sauce here is, though?
Yeah.
Barbarians get all of their best features up front. Fighters get a lot of their best features up front.
Rage, reckless attack, fighting style, action surge, second wind. It's really really with these two characters, it's a question of which do you take first, because you want to get extra attack. You want to go 5 levels of one than the other, because again, if we look at it in just straight up terms, Barbarian 5, Fighter 3 has everything you want. You have extra attack, you have fast movement, you have action surge, you have all the cool fighter features. You can get the Battlemaster maneuvers. You can use Battlemaster maneuvers while you are raging. And you have all the juicy Barbarian features, and you got a feat in there so that you can grab Great Weapon Master while you're at it.
Battlemaster works here, but I would also say Rune Knight works really well. Champion works really well. Everything except the
Can you use Psychic Warrior stuff when you're raging? Because it's not spells.
I guess, the Psy Warrior would work here. There's and the fact
you could be an Echo Knight. There's a lot that works.
The fact is that, like, because Barbarian is front loaded, after level 5, the abilities you get are not even close to as good as getting action surge, a fighting style.
Fighter 3 Barbarian 5 is stronger than both Fighter 8 and Barbarian 8.
Which is why this is S tier.
Yeah.
So Fighter is your S tier, and actually you play a stronger character by moving away from Barbarian at level 5.
I do think that there's arguments to be made about what do you do past level 10. Because at 11th level, fighters get their third attack. And I think that a Barbarian 6, like a Barbarian, like if you were, I think that if you were a 12th level character and had 6 levels of Barbarian and 6 levels of fighter, you might be kind of sad that you don't have that third attack. And so I think that there's kind of, if you're going to play to higher levels, Barbarian 3, Fighter 11 is kind of the gold standard, because you're getting both rage, you're getting everything in that you want and more. But again, if your campaign's not going to go that high, and many don't, I think an even split between them is pretty good.
Yeah. I think this is our strongest choice for the Barbarian.
Yeah, absolutely S tier. There might be some drop off, and there's some different build options, but it's really hard to go wrong.
I want to talk about maybe not the most optimal choice, but one that is relatively interesting, and that's going to be the Monk.
Okay. The Monk-Barbarian combination is one that I have seen tons of people try to make work.
Yeah.
And this is one of those examples of where all of the restrictions and exceptions, they keep coming up to bite you as you try to build this combination. And if the rules were a little bit more relaxed, there would be amazing opportunities in an enraged monk. Right? Like, because Barbarian Monk, is that not just Super Saiyan? Like, your monk going, like, Goku finding power in anger with the martial artist? Right?
Like, and there is something, I want to say that, like, these two I want to say that these two classes as a multiclass are a bit of a Venn diagram. There's a really happy middle where you're like, oh, these features actually go well together. Yeah. But then there's all those outside parts that aren't gelling.
Yeah, and this is where you run into, like, a couple difficulties. Like, the first thing is the unarmored defense.
You have to pick one.
You have to pick one. You can't have a character that is Barbarian, Monk, and that is adding Wisdom, Dexterity, and Constitution to their AC. So you immediately have a problem right off the bat.
I mean, I would go with the Barbarian option.
The con dex over the wisdom dex? Well,
because I'm going to be using I'm not going to be using wisdom as much.
Well, you still need it.
You still need
it for many of the monk features, because that's going to impact the strength of Stunning Strike.
Here's what I am imagining, though. Okay, we have a Barbarian. Because we need to use a monk weapon, we're going dual wielding with 2 short swords, or 2 scimitars, I feel is really iconic here. We are now able to Stunning Strike, and we are able to Flurry of Blows while we are raging.
But you don't actually need that second scimitar, because you're already getting your offhand attacks, unless you're using, like, new 1D&D 2-weapon fighting rules here. But at the same time, you have to have strength if you want to get the bonus from rage damage and you want to be able to use reckless attack.
I'm still using strength, yeah.
Yeah, because this is the key thing, is that if you're using a finesse weapon, you can still attack with that weapon using your strength, and thus benefit from all your barbarian features. But if you are actually using your dexterity to make the attack, it can't be a reckless attack, and you won't get some of your bonuses from being a barbarian. So you have to be a strength-based monk. And as well, you have to be unarmed or using a monk weapon to get the martial arts die to actually boost up. As soon as you are wielding a weapon that is not a monk weapon, the martial arts feature turns off. And now you can't use any of those other things. So you can't, and I looked at this like, oh, could I use a great axe if I was a way of the Kensai monk? No. Flip side, can you be a Path of the Beast barbarian and use those claw attacks as your unarmed strikes? No, you can't. You keep running into all these incompatibilities when all I want to be is an angry drunken master monk that goes into a rage. And like none of these features work together seamlessly. In theory, if you had a DM that was willing to overlook all these things, I actually think that there's something really strong here.
If the DM allows you to focus on the middle of the Venn diagram and be lenient on the stuff on the outside, this is actually a brilliant combination. But if we're going mechanically, this isn't D tier.
No, and it could be A tier if the rules as written supported it better.
Yeah.
Because if we imagine a hypothetical ideal where we could have a barbarian monk that was swinging around a great axe with great weapon master and then kicking people with flurry of blows and making stunning strikes against them while raging, wouldn't that be cool if that worked? But I haven't found a way to be able to do that. And if you have, I'd love to hear about it. Like, what is the way within the rules? It seems to me that there's no way to make that possible unless the dungeon master makes an exception somewhere.
I feel like there's enough here for me to say that this is a C+ or a B-.
Yeah, like maybe there's a build, and this is why I say, like, is it possible to have a Barbarian 5 monk, like a Barbarian 5 monk 5, that is wielding a heavy weapon with great weapon master?
I mean, probably not.
I don't think there is.
But I feel like you could get somewhere with like double scimitars.
Yeah, but it would be really sweet because like it would be really sweet if you could like stunning strike with a great axe attack.
I mean, I know you love your great axes on your barbarians, but there's other types of barbarians.
Even if you could use the Path of the Beast features with the monk.
I mean, yes, that would be neat. But I definitely have a visualization of like the pirate muscle guy with the 2 scimitars.
Okay, that's kind of cool. I guess that's kind of one piecey, maybe. That could work. Yeah. All right, sure.
So B or C?
I think it's B-.
Let's give it a B because the monks deserve.
I will give it a conditional B. A conditional B-. But I want to see someone post a build in the comments that actually works.
Give us your best monk-barian builds.
Yeah.
Moving on to Paladin.
Angry Fist. The Angry Fist.
Path of the Angry Fist?
Yeah.
Well, there's our new monk subclass.
Yeah.
Now we'll move on to Paladin. Paladin, really interesting choice here. When I picture a Paladin, picture heavy armor, picture shield, picture divine energy. We're going to strip all that away.
This is Righteous Rage.
Righteous Rage.
Yeah.
What we do have, though, is once we strip away my mental image of a paladin, what are we left with? Smites.
And what can you do when you're raging?
Smite.
It's using spell slots, but it's not casting spells.
That's the thing, is usually spell casting is like, but we can't rage and cast spells. We don't care. We're not using those spells. Like, okay, so I have command and find steed. I'm just going to run into battle and smite everything with those spell slots.
And you have a couple of those spells that you can use out of combat if you want to, or if you drop out of your rage. Again, that's a possible thing. You can head them out, too, which is super cool.
You can.
And you can use your channel divinity powers while you're raging as well. So there would be really cool stuff that you could do here with like the Oath of Conquest. I actually don't think the Oath of Vengeance is what you want here, because so much of the Oath of Vengeance actually is the advantage from the Oath of Enmity but you don't need that.
Because you have reckless attack.
Exactly, right? And Oath of Vengeance beyond that is Hunter's Mark and teleporting spells, which you're not going to be able to use. But converting those spell slots to smites and just smiting someone in rage, I think it's really good.
Yeah, I'm thinking Oath of Conquest. Oath of the Ancients does this interesting thing
Oath
where
of Redemption.
Oath of Ancients is interesting the way that it plays with. Usually I would go Totem Warrior Barbarian and take the Bear Totem.
Yeah.
But Oath of Ancients actually frees up that because we're still gaining the Oath of Ancients resistance to magic.
I think this is an A.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's as good as the fighter, but I think it's really good.
I think that the Nova potential of your Reckless Attack smites, and you can go Great Weapon Master, Polearm
It's so
Master.
easy for you to get advantage too, so you can fish for critical hits to smite on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm willing to give this one an A.
Yeah, me too. What about the Ranger?
So,
Because the Ranger has a lot in common with like...
it's the Fighter Druid.
It's the Fighter Druid. It's mechanically similar to Paladins, but we're not getting smites. So we're not going to be able to use those spells in combat. But I think one of the things that's worth noting is that a lot of Ranger spells are good for exploration.
And the only thing that Barbarian is mildly good at outside of combat is usually exploration.
So this might be an opportunity to just broaden your non-combat contributions by multiclassing to Ranger.
Although you do get a fighting style out of multiclassing
You do,
to Ranger.
which is good. And you could potentially be a Gloomstalker and just love life.
Yeah.
You know?
So if you were Gloomstalker, then you're the Barbarian in the Shadows. Cool.
Yeah.
You get a fighting style, but then on top of that, if your spellcasting is focused on like Pass Without Trace or like Speak to Plants, all of these things that will help you
The rage they did not see coming.
Yeah. But there's so much potential here with outside of combat that I don't think this is the strongest choice by any means. And I actually think that it's hard to say whether you're stronger by taking Ranger or not. But I feel like we're landing in the middle here, and so I'm going to give it a B.
Yeah, I think so. I think it could be a B. I think it definitely is more workable on paper than the Monk.
Yeah.
And I think that I would be willing to take more levels of it than Cleric.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as dippable as Cleric. I feel like, I think that there's a build that could make this work.
I think that if you're looking for a Barbarian whose exploration impact...
You're not going to be an Archer.
No. But there's nothing that says Rangers have to be Archers.
Could you be a Beastmaster? Could you do something with the Beastmaster and the... Or the...
I mean, we want Barbarians to have their bear.
Yeah.
It's like the warrior and his bear.
It would just not be a very strong beast because like the beast relies so much on the scaling of the Ranger levels, right? So it would get iced pretty quick.
So your bear is Winnie the Pooh.
Little mascot.
Let's move on to the rogue. There's a really interesting combination here because rogues and barbarians thematically are opposite sides of the spectrum.
But there's all this talk about that, iconically people talk about how Conan the Barbarian was much more roguelike in many ways.
Yes.
Than when you read the original stories compared to like the modern incarnation. So I think there's a bit of like a classic sort of feel to making this combination work. One thing that is worth noting right off the top is the interaction between reckless attack and sneak attack.
Yes.
Because once again, we run into some weird issues here.
Oh.
Reckless attack grants you advantage on your attack rolls, but you have to be using a strength-based weapon. You have to be using strength. Whereas with sneak attack, you must be using a ranged weapon, which you can't reckless attack with, or a finesse weapon. So once again, we can't...
Double scimitars.
Yes, double scimitars. The double scimitars are back.
Okay, so this is my new vibe for a barbarian. I used to be a great axe guy. I'm a double scimitar guy now because it's working with all my multi-classing. If we take double scimitars, where we can attack with strength, we can reckless attack,
and we can sneak attack.
And since we're gaining extra attack from being a barbarian, and since we have dual wielding, we're dual wielding scimitars, we have a lot of opportunities
And cunning action is very usable. Like, you have to enter your rage as a bonus action, but cunning action is going to make you very fast and hard to escape from.
Reliable sneak attack.
Honestly, I would
Cunning
even say
action.
that even, honestly, just dipping into Rogue to get cunning action and getting the skill proficiencies, that alone is A. As a Barbarian, like, I feel like as a Barbarian, just having cunning action alone is amazing.
Cunning action is amazing. Sneak attack.
But even if you're not using the sneak attack.
But you will. And you have reckless attack, and you
You don't have to.
But I would.
I think this is A. I think the dip is A, and I think that you could make your scimitar build work too.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give it an A.
Yeah, I think it's worthy of an A.
Option.
Yeah, I think it is. Like, it's weird. It's definitely non-standard. You get, like, what subclass would you take? The Scout could be really cool.
Could you picture a swashbuckler barbarian? You're not really... Then it's asking charisma of you as well.
It is, but you don't have to. It makes landing your sneak attacks really easy.
I think the Scout works. I mean, the Barbarian Scout Barbarian Thief is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty classic. I don't know if you would...
Mechanically, maybe
honestly,
not, but
you could be an
thematically.
Arcane Trickster just to have the familiar. But again, you don't really need the familiar to give you advantage.
No.
Because you've got reckless attack, right? So...
There's some cool combos in there, though.
What about the Soul Knife?
Oh, so awesome.
Yeah, I wonder if that works. It's just, again, that there's no such thing as a heavy finesse weapon.
That's fine. We have scimitars.
Yeah, but I like Great Weapon Master.
I know you do. But you can't win them all. And actually, that is the question. What stops us from being S tier, I think, is a Barbarian with Great Weapon Master and Polearm Master.
Wouldn't you love
better?
to sneak attack someone with a Great Axe?
Yes.
Yeah, but you can't.
Surprise!
Axe to the face!
Axe to the face. Didn't see that coming.
No, didn't.
I feel like we can bundle this last group together. I know that we do this sometimes in these videos, but let's be real. Warlock, Sorcerer, Wizard. They're all S tier. Rage Mage.
Yeah, the Rage Mage.
The Rage Mage. S tier.
That whole class feature that lets you cast spells while you're raging.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Totally. Doesn't exist.
No, unfortunately it doesn't exist. And all three of these are primary spellcasters. Even if you try to go into something like Hexblade, doesn't work.
Yeah.
You're
there's no, you can't make the
Blade Singer.
The Blade Singer
doesn't work.
I guess technically you can be in Blade Song while you're raging. But the Blade Singer wants to cast cantrips as part of their extra attack thing. Yeah, no, it just doesn't work.
Unlike some of the other spellcasters we've talked about, with Cleric we're talking about a very small dip. And you gain other things from being a Cleric. Druid, Wild Shape. And then you can use your spellcasting for exploration. Ranger, you're using your spellcasting for exploration. Paladin, you're using your spellcasting for smites. Warlock, Sorcerer, and Wizard, the only reason to dip into these classes is to gain spells. And you're not going to use them.
Yeah, and I think all of those classes present more compelling combat options in other combinations.
Yeah.
I just don't think... I don't think that there's enough to put together here. I think it's universally D tier for all three.
D tier for Warlock, D tier for Sorcerer, D tier for Wizard. Sorry. Like a theoretical Rage Mage just doesn't exist. What is interesting is when we look at all of this, the Barbarian presents a class that actually, after level 5, likes taking a dip somewhere else.
It really does. It really does. And arguably, if you're going the other way around, you get a lot out of just those first 3 levels of Barbarian.
Yeah.
It's a very front-loaded class, and so it does make it easy to jump into Druid or Fighter or Paladin or Rogue. And I think all of those could be effective options depending on the way that you want to build your character. I wish there was more to build onto with the Monk and the Ranger. There's potential in both, but I think that unequivocally the Paladin, the Rogue, and the Fighter make the most long-term options compelling, and I think the Druid being the strongest in that one brief shining moment.
So up on screen right now, here's our final rankings for all of the multiclassing potential that a Barbarian has. And let's follow that up with the community responses. So without a doubt, our community agrees with us that the top S tier choice here is Fighter, getting 91.2% votes. Now, mind you, our entire community was able to pick their top 3, but I think everybody picked Fighter.
I'm just surprised that it didn't get 100%.
And yeah. What is also interesting is the next highest option is staying single class. And we included this option for a reason. It allows us to kind of draw a line, because although we're reviewing multiclassing, the question is taking a multiclass more beneficial than staying as the class itself? And in the terms of the Barbarian, if we look at the community says that other than Fighter, it's really up in the air whether any of the other options are worth taking over just continuing with Barbarian. Now, we also got really high percentages with Druid, Paladin, and Rogue, which I think is fair.
Yeah. On the flip side, I'm actually surprised that the Bard did a little bit better than the Cleric. I think the Cleric combo is much
It's because
stronger.
Barbarian just sounds so good.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by the Ranger, and it really looks like a few people have faith in the Warlock, which surprises me. And maybe we got to rethink. Maybe that one we got to just think one more time. Is there something in there?
Okay, well, what I will say is Sorcerer and Wizard, definitely the only thing you're getting out of those two is spellcasting and manipulation of spellcasting.
But I don't think the Hexblade Barbarian is a thing.
Not the Hexblade, but the Warlock does gain features other than spellcasting. So maybe there's something with, like, I'm a great old one, Barbarian. Again, I think it's a weak option. I'm still going to give it a D. The community did rank it as a few people gave it one of their top 3 options. So if you disagree with us, I want to hear about the Warlock Barbarian build that works. I don't think it's going to get higher than a C ranking. Even if you say, here's the build that works, I'll say you got 1. Unless you can convince me that multiclassing Barbarian and Warlock works in almost any combination, I still think it's not a great option.
That's the whole thing. I think that the Fighter Barbarian, like, you can just take any 2 of those subclasses and it works beautifully, right? I think that the Paladin Barbarian also has that, and I think we saw with the Rogue too, there was a lot of different mixing and matching there. But as soon as we get into the Monk, that's where it's like, okay, what are the subclasses now?
And you have to be specific.
Yeah. And the Ranger as well, it's like some subclasses maybe, others not.
Yeah.
Whereas with the other classes, it's just like, I don't think there's any material to put together there. Yeah.
So if you have tried any of these multiclassing combinations or have one that either proves us wrong or is the exception to the rule, then please let us know about them in the comments below.
The videos we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube, please consider becoming a patron of our show by following the links in the description below.
And if you want to check out us playing D&D, you can check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got plenty more tier ranking videos for D&D right up over here.
Please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
in the dungeon.